The world believed it had learned its lesson in 1918. The Great War had promised to end all wars, and yet, less than 20 years later, the world was already trembling again. Peace had become fragile, a glass fortress built on fear, economic despair, and denial. And within that fragility, three men dreamed of empire: Hitler in Germany, Hirohito's generals in Japan, and Benito Mussolini in Italy. To his people, he was Il Duce, the leader. To the rest of the world, he was the first spark in a slow-burning fuse. Italy had won the Great War on paper, but its people felt cheated. No grand territories, no Roman glory. The promise of victory had delivered only debt and disappointment. Mussolini seized power in 1922, preaching discipline, nationalism, and rebirth. He wrapped his movement in the symbols of ancient Rome: the fasces, the eagle, the salute. He promised to make Italy great again, whatever the cost. By 1935, his ambitions turned outward. Italy needed colonies and revenge. Half a century earlier, Italian forces had been humiliated by a small African kingdom, Abyssinia, now Ethiopia. For Mussolini, that old defeat was an open wound. On the morning of October 3, 1935, Italian troops crossed the Mereb River and invaded Abyssinia. It was an act of naked aggression and the world's first test of collective security. The League condemned the attack and did nothing more. Sanctions were symbolic: no oil embargo, no military response. Britain and France, drained by depression, feared confrontation. Mussolini's bombers rained chemical weapons, mustard gas, on villages that had no defense. Tens of thousands died, and still the League hesitated. The words of Emperor Haile Selassie echoed through the marble halls and faded into silence. For Hitler, watching from Berlin, the lesson was unmistakable. The world's democracies were not just weary, they were paralyzed by fear. The fuse had burned shorter. But even as Africa fell to fascism, another storm brewed in Europe's southwest, a civil war that would become a rehearsal for the apocalypse. Spain had been a fragile republic, torn between left and right, church and state. In July 1936, a group of generals led by Francisco Franco rose in revolt against the elected government. The Spanish Civil War had begun. What followed was not just a national conflict, it was a proxy war for the soul of Europe. On one side, the Republicans, workers, socialists, and Democrats, backed loosely by the Soviet Union. On the other, Franco's nationalists, monarchists, fascists, and conservatives, supported by Germany and Italy. Tens of thousands of idealists from around the world came to fight for the Republic, the international brigades. Poets, students, dreamers. George Orwell would write of it later: a war where idealism met brutality. For Hitler and Mussolini, Spain was a laboratory. They sent aircraft, tanks, and volunteers to aid Franco and to test their new machines of war. Here, the Luftwaffe rehearsed a tactic the world had never seen: Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. Fast-moving armor, coordinated airstrikes, shock and awe. On April 26, 1937, the town of Guernica was annihilated. Hundreds of civilians killed in minutes, a warning written in fire. The painting captured what film could not: twisted faces, shattered bodies, the birth cry of modern warfare. The world was horrified, and yet again, it did nothing. Britain and France refused to intervene, fearing another continental war. Their silence spoke louder than any speech. When Franco triumphed, fascism triumphed with him. The dictators had seen the future, and it worked. From Ethiopia's deserts to Spain's cities, the world's conscience had been tested twice, and failed twice. Now the stage was set for the final rehearsal: Europe itself. Next, Hitler would reach for a prize closer to home. Austria, the land of his birth, would fall without a single shot. In March 1938, Hitler turned his eyes toward Austria, the country that had once rejected him as a failed art student. Now he would return not as an exile, but as a conqueror. German forces crossed the border on March 12th. There was no resistance. Many Austrians welcomed the Anschluss, believing unification would restore prosperity. Britain and France protested, on paper. No armies moved, no sanctions followed. The world convinced itself that Austria was an internal German affair. It was the moment he had dreamed of since his youth: the unification of all Germans under one flag. The Anschluss showed him a dangerous truth: the world would accept conquest, so long as it came draped in ceremony. After Austria, Hitler's appetite only grew. He now demanded the Sudetenland, the border region of Czechoslovakia, home to 3 million ethnic Germans. Czechoslovakia was a small democracy, modern, industrious, and armed. Its alliances with France and the Soviet Union should have protected it. But its fate would be decided not in Prague, but in Munich. In September 1938, the leaders of Britain, France, Italy, and Germany met to avert war. Czechoslovakia was not invited to its own dismemberment. Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, believed compromise to preserve peace. He was haunted by the ghosts of the trenches. Hitler demanded the Sudetenland, and Chamberlain gave it to him. Appeasement was born. In exchange for Hitler's promise that this was his last territorial demand, Europe traded land for illusion. Peace, for our time, lasted 6 months. By March 1939, Hitler tore up the agreement and seized the rest of Czechoslovakia. The mask was gone. Diplomacy had failed. Appeasement had bought only time, and not enough of it. As Europe reeled from betrayal, Hitler made his boldest move yet. He approached his greatest ideological enemy, the Soviet Union. On August 23, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union shocked the world. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact guaranteed that neither side would attack the other, but hidden within its secret protocol was the true horror. The two powers agreed to carve up Poland between them. It was a marriage of convenience, built on lies and ambition. Hitler gained freedom to strike westward. Stalin gained time to rebuild his armies. The fuse was now seconds from detonation. At 4:45 a.m. on September 1, 1939, Germany struck. Without warning, the Luftwaffe bombed the Polish town of Wielin. Moments later, tanks of the Wehrmacht thundered across the frontier. Blitzkrieg, Lightning War, was unleashed in full. Planes, armor, and infantry moved as one devastating machine. Poland's defenses collapsed under the onslaught. The world's last illusions of peace vanished in the smoke. On September 3, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. For 20 years, the world had tried to forget the Great War. In one morning, it remembered everything. From Abyssinia's deserts to Poland's plains, mankind had ignored every warning, and now the bill had come due. In less than 4 years, aggression had triumphed over reason. Fear had silenced courage. The world's democracies, trapped by hesitation, had allowed the darkness to rise. World War II had begun, not with one decision, but with 1,000 failures. Failures of vision, of unity, of will. The road to ruin was paved by good intentions and unchallenged evil. In our next episode, we witness the world at war, the fall of Europe, and the fight for survival. This is the final act.
Generate by AI.